So as we get set for this next panel, we're really going to look at who has the power to make change. One of the challenges when you look at the issues going on in the country with racism, there's a lot of discussion where people feel helpless. People feel that they don't have a voice, they don't have a control to make the change. And so sometimes other actions are taken because of that feeling of helplessness. But I think when you look around at everybody that's involved here in the community, there's so many people with strength, so many organizations that have that power to change. So that's what panel 3 is going to look at. I want to introduce the moderator, Deon Thomas. Deon is the all-time leading scorer for basketball at the University of Illinois. And Deon has a unique perspective as well because he played overseas in Europe and in Israel, including winning European championship titles with Maccabi Tel Aviv. And so Deon is now working at the University of Illinois as Associate Director of Development. He's been around the sports world for a long time and literally around the world. So Deon, thank you for being with us today. Let's get you unmuted here.
Roy, as always, I truly appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this town hall as well as the first one that I was on with you. This is a great opportunity and a very important moment to have this discussion. This is a time for empathy. This is a time for learning. And I think with all of the people that are on this, that are involved in this town hall right now, there's going to be some serious change coming. And I think it will be positive, not just for individuals, but for the country as a whole. So thank you again for allowing me to be a part of this, to be the moderator for this. But I have some great people on my panel, and I feel really good to be able to talk about this topic, who has the power to make change. But first, I'm going to introduce my panelists. First, I've known Justin for years. Justin Breen is the founder of BrEpic Communications. Then we have Keenan Harrell, who's the Community Relations Manager for the Baltimore Ravens. Great job drafting Lamar, man. I know you didn't really have a whole lot to do with that, but great job, brother.
Hey, Jack, I take all the credit. I take all the credit.
There you go. There you go. Next up is Alycia Powell. She's the co-founder of Champions for Philanthropy. And last but not least is Reggie Smith. He's the board of directors for former players for the National Football League Players Association. So first of all, welcome guys. Thank you for joining us. Here I'm going to take an opportunity, and we'll start from the top of this list and move down, just to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about what you do and how you're involved with Roy and the Sports Philanthropy Group. So we'll start with Justin.
Deon, thanks so much, Roy. This is great. I'm really happy to be a part of this. It's just been a very exciting time for me and my business. I was a journalist for 20 years and have seen how the media, I think, is starting to embrace this movement in a much better, more proactive way. And I've been a business owner for 3 years and have seen how entrepreneurs around the world have really helped people and are leading the way in creating companies that not only hire an incredible amount of people, but promote positive culture that is changing society for the better. So thanks for including me in this awesome panel.
Next up, we have Keenan. Keenan?
Gotcha.
There you go.
All right. Yeah. So once again, thank you for having me to discuss this extremely important topic and sort of capture this historic moment in history right now. My name is Keenan Harrell. I'm the Community Relations Manager for the Baltimore Ravens, and in my role, I am responsible for working with nonprofit partners, in addition to obviously our players, and on behalf of our Ravens Foundation and the Ravens organization, in conducting philanthropic work throughout the greater Baltimore region. And that looks different every single week, every single year. One day we might be in a school doing a Play 60 event, talking to students about proper health and wellness. Next day we might be in a church in the middle of Baltimore City discussing social justice initiatives and doing things like that. So it's an incredible role. It's a role that allows our organization to really make a true impact, a measurable and sustainable impact. And social justice, racial equality, that is something that we will be all over and have been all over for the past couple of years, but definitely a space that we're looking forward to continuing to make a big impact in.
Thank you. Alycia, Powell is next.
Hi, so my name is Alycia Powell. I'm the co-founder of Champions for Philanthropy. We work with professional athletes in the charitable space. So everything from helping them start up their nonprofit foundation as well as to managing their foundation. And because having a nonprofit isn't right for every athlete, we work with athletes and entertainers to help create charitable initiatives and partnerships.
Thank you, Alycia. And Reggie Smith.
Hi, guys. I am again Reggie Smith, and I am part of a 9-member board of the NFL Players Association, one of the boards that I'm on. What's most important about that board is that we have 30 some odd chapters around the country of former players, men that are out in the community working hard to make sure that we're giving back to the community that supported us throughout our careers.
Reggie, thank you very much. As we, and yes, pun intended, as we take the handoff from the first group, the second panel, who has the right to define the issue. Our job right now is to kind of discuss who has the power to make change. Because as we have the issue, we've defined the issues, now we have to do some things to make change. And as we've seen in the current news stories and things of that sort, there's a lot of people trying to define what it is, but no one's trying to define who makes a change. Is it the community? Is it the education system? Is it the police, criminal justice system, or the political system? Who has the right to make change? Let's start with Alycia, ladies first.
Yeah, so, one thing that we discussed, it's such a, racism is so deeply rooted and it's so interwoven into the fabric of everything that the country is built on. It's hard to say there's one particular group that would need to be addressed first or that would be have the magic fix, right? So it's really about addressing all of the issues and you taking a multi-layered approach to it and just working to make changes in each one of those systems.
Thank you, Alycia. Keenan, your thoughts?
Yeah, so my thoughts on that, I hate for it to sound vague, but I truly believe that we all have a role in sort of being responsible for making that change. Whether, we've seen what happens when you sort of maybe surrender that responsibility to a politician or maybe a legislator or someone an elected official that you trust to sort of make that change. But ultimately what we have seen, whether it's through protesting, civic engagement, any citizens just simply applying pressure to those in power, we've been able to make a lot of great change, in the last few weeks and the last few months. So ultimately, whether it's you voting or talking in a boardroom about racial equity and systemic racism and things like that, talking about it in your church, talking about it at the grocery store, just being aware and being more socially responsible. I think all those things combined sort of help us to shift the culture in the direction that we want it to go into, and also empowers all of us to make that change that we want to see.
As we broke out in our discussion, Justin, I thought that you had a great, another view from your background and from your profession. Can you talk a little bit about your view that, with the same point of who has the right or the power to make this change? Justin?
Yeah, so I have an outlier brain even for an entrepreneur, and I do not speak in generalities. I'm very specific. And my career, I was a journalist for 20 years, and then I've been an entrepreneur for a little over 3. And those are 2 key areas that not only are going to start leading this, but really creating massive, massive change. So in media, for being in that for 20 plus years, you see a lot of great journalists. You see a lot of really bad journalists who do the wrong things, who tell the wrong stories. I am frankly sick and tired of it. If it bleeds, it leads mentality, that leads all the newscasts. That is something that specifically in Chicago and really any major market, those are the stories that lead, as opposed to the story that I've written for most of my life and that my firm does about positive, inspirational people who are doing great things. So hopefully we're starting to see more of that type of change, and hopefully media can lead the way in that example. And then the second facet of my professional life has been a business leader. Working and being part of several international entrepreneurial organizations where there are folks, running 7, 8, 9, 10-figure businesses. And those are the folks that are not only creating companies and ideas that are hiring incredible people, but those are the folks that are creating these core values that are shaped and literally in the fabric of their being of creating positive things that are helpful for their businesses, but also for society as a whole. So good 2 places to start are media and entrepreneurs leading the way. I mean, entrepreneurs are the ones that are going to be creating these companies that are helping people become employed and then creating cultures that are really helpful for people in society moving forward.
Roy mentioned earlier my vast experience of living abroad. And I'll say that growing up on the west side of Chicago and then moving to Inglewood, which is on the south side of Chicago. For those that are not from Chicago, those are 2 of the most violent areas in the city. Going to the University of Illinois and then having the ability to go and play abroad and learn as much as I have really influenced, my ideas of how life is supposed to be and how it's supposed to look. So it's great to hear you mention the influence from the entrepreneurs that you here in our country, but also the ideas that they're going to be bringing to our new society as we get through this COVID deal, as well as the current racial climate. But I have this question for Reggie. We've talked about a few systems. We said that everyone needs to pitch in. How can we influence those systems and those individuals to be more proactive in making lasting change?
Well, the problem is so big that it's going to take all of us, and we all will have different opportunities to lead. Right now, the leader is the community. And when I say community, I mean the planet. We saw protests around the world, and we saw movement that was unprecedented because we all got in the same boat and started rowing in the same direction. And that created this power that allowed government or legislator to act in a way that I have not seen in my lifetime, where something would be tabled session after session is now on the table in a weekend and passed by Monday morning. Wow. So community that's the lead now. Journalism will have a lead. Government will have a lead. So we all will change leads back and forth to get this big problem solved. But the best part is these wonderful conversations that we're having, that we have to continue to have, don't stop having, because we have this energy going right now that is just powerful, and we need to continue applying the pressure.
Thank you, Reggie. I think that's a great answer. I have a follow-up with that. So we have the vast groups and people that we need to push and move forward. And this is open to the panel, but I think we'll start with Alycia first. What is the role that young people play in our current move forward? And I ask that because when we all know how things have been historically, and I look at my daughter's friend base, and I kid with her sometimes, and I tell her it looks like a Benetton commercial. For those of you that don't know about Benetton, I mean, it's an Italian company, and when they would put up a commercial or a print ad, you would have someone from every racial background on that poster. And that's how her friend group looks. what's the influence of young people today as we continue to try to move this forward?
It's been really inspirational to watch. You know, I'll be honest, I was nervous about this generation a few years ago. I didn't know, you know, what direction they were going in. But these last few weeks, this last month in particular, they've really showed up and showed out. And they've showed that, you know, some of the norms that we've had in the past are just not going to cut it anymore, you know, not just with racial inequality, but with other social justice issues, the acceptance of the LGBTQ community and the moving forward of the community there. And it's a whole new generation that's able to be connected in a way that we've never been able to be connected before. They're able to communicate to a larger group. They're able to learn more about cultures than we may have had access to in the past. So it's really inspiring to watch, and I really feel like we're in good hands. You know, I think that they're having conversations that perhaps Gen Z or millennials didn't have with their parents or with their grandparents. This younger generation isn't afraid to have those tough conversations, and they're not afraid to take a stand.
Great answer. I appreciate that. Now, I have this one, and I'm going to throw this one out to my two football guys. Professional athletes have done a great job of stepping forward. I mean, in the previous discussions, they mentioned Muhammad Ali and some of the others that have stepped forward and have been advocates. The NFL stepped out quick and fast in a hurry. If you look at things on the news and doing this, but if we look at this, we have so many leaders, and I think you all will agree with this. If we got a bunch of cooks in the kitchen, sometimes the food doesn't taste as well. How do we prioritize, or do we prioritize who leads this change?
Well, I don't know if we can prioritize, because where I sit is that we all have something to say, and I guess the public will determine who leads. What you have to say when you have to say it will move people, and they will move in that direction. And I think that from an athlete standpoint, when you are privileged to have a platform, how small or how large, doesn't matter, that it's still a privilege, that it's a responsibility to say something and do something. If it's just organizing in your community, no matter how small that community is, that will grow larger and larger. And if we all do that with a platform, change will happen.
And to piggyback off of Reggie, I think what he said was spot on. Ultimately, I think history will determine who should have or who has, you know, the, I guess maybe the authority or the leadership to lead on this issue. You know, from the NFL perspective, you know, we have sort of our cookie cutter initiatives that we've been on. So Play 60 for youth health and wellness. We have Crucial Catch for cancer awareness. We have Character Playbook to encourage youth to be, you know, responsible and act kind to each other. So those things have always been things that everyone can sort of, I guess, agree upon, if you will. Those things aren't controversial. Those things aren't hot topics per se. But when it comes to social justice, racial equality, fixing those inequities that exist in our country, that is a hot topic issue. And it's also something that's rapidly evolving. So I think people, you know, NFL wise, are trying to figure out exactly who is, quote unquote, the right person to take the charge on this. But ultimately, you know, and this sort of goes back to what I said before, you know, it's a little bit of everyone's responsibility. So, you know, what Roger Goodell says might have a different impact than maybe what Kenny Still says, simply because they might appeal to a different group or a different audience, and their experiences are very different. But either way, them both advocating for social change, for racial justice, for those things, it will still accomplish something. So ultimately, I don't think it's one, you know, full person. I think it's a movement that is in constant flux, and, you know, the leaders will emerge throughout, but ultimately, you got to attack it from every angle, every perspective, every point or position of power within the NFL.
I love that, and you're right. We've had so many different just iterations of this here lately. I mean, things are changing, things are moving quickly. Are things moving quick enough? I mean, now with this, and I know that's a crazy question because it's been 400 plus years that this hasn't moved forward, but now recently, and it's been mentioned earlier about how quickly by Reggie, as a matter of fact, how quickly things are not being tabled. They're moving right to discussion and even passing of various laws. How do we continue that forward? And are things moving fast enough? Justin, I'm going to hand that one off to you, and then we'll give everyone an opportunity if they want to discuss it.
It's an interesting thing because usually when you have nothing to do and nothing to lose, that leads to a lot of problems. In this case, nothing to do and nothing to lose has led to a lot of great joy because people don't have they can't go anywhere. You can't really do anything. A lot of people aren't working. And so they've refocused on their priorities in life, whether it's family or creating real change. So I think that's why you're seeing things move at instead of a glacial, stately pace, you're seeing very rapid change. And so as long as things stay like this for the foreseeable future, which I imagine they will, I don't see this virus getting any better where there's going to be massive gatherings and stuff. I just don't. I mean, there's no vaccine. So I foresee massive change happening, certainly with the rest of this calendar year, and continuing well into 2021 and beyond, because people don't have anything to do, and they're at the point now where they have nothing to lose.
I had another one, another question prepared, but I like the one that Mario Ponce put up. His question is, what do you think about some NFL owners choosing to be silent on racism? I mean, and from the big picture, the NFL has kind of stepped up, at least Goodell and some of the others. But it seems like, and this isn't just in football. I mean, this is in basketball. This is in baseball as well. I mean, especially when you have the governor, Ricketts, who is, I have to say I'm a Cubs fan, but I'm kind of giving that some second thought with him being in ownership and the things he's doing in Nebraska and the things he's saying in Nebraska. Keenan, what do you think about the owners being silent? And, and that's probably, I shouldn't probably ask you that. I mean, you do work for Baltimore. Uh-oh, we have Keenan on mute. There you go.
Yeah, that's a good question there. So I'll say this. The only NFL team I have worked for is the Baltimore Ravens, and our owner and our senior leadership, our whole organization. I mean, we put out a video 2 weeks ago in support of Black Lives Matter, and included our staff and included our players, and it was us taking a global stance on this issue. So in that sense, we have been vocal about it, and we have let people know where we stand on this issue. I only know our owner, and I can't speak on the behalf of other NFL owners. But what I will say is, ultimately that's that's up to their own leadership. Any person in power, across the board in any industry is getting looked at extra hard right now, simply because of the stance that they're taking or choosing not to take right now. And ultimately, sometimes silence speaks volumes, but at the same time, also it solidifies where you stand historically, and people will remember that. Like I said, I can't speak on what other owners have said or haven't said, or whether what they're comfortable doing or not doing, or what type of support they have or haven't shown. I don't know, but I think the public will sort of determine that. It's sort of like the stock market a little bit. If a company does the right thing or is doing well or isn't doing well, the market will see it, and the company's performance will reflect that. So we'll see what happens.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. I have one more. No, not one more. Hopefully we got more time, Roy. I don't know where we are on time, but Alycia, and it was mentioned earlier about the single family and basically mothers raising. I come from a single family. My mother was, and she just laughed at me this Father's Day because I sent her a message and told her Happy Father's Day. And she got a kick out of that, but my brothers and I do it, my youngest brother and I do it every year. What's the role for women in this? I believe, and I have no problem saying it, that women are the stronger sex. You guys are the smarter sex, and my wife laughs at me when I say that, but I honestly believe it. What's the role of women as we try to move this thing forward?
Yeah, a lot of focus goes on the male activist, the male sports activists, kind of not looking at the females who have been a part of this conversation over history, but especially now. The WNBA, even before the NBA started, the WNBA was very, very vocal in terms of social justice issues and making sure that they took a stand, a united stand, the whole team. But a lot of times the focus goes on the male athletes. For example, right now, the NBA, they have discussed allowing players to have either names of victims of police brutality or other social justice issues on the back of their jerseys. Well, that petition was started by Angel McCoughtry, who's a WNBA player. She petitioned the WNBA to do that. Most people won't know that part of the story. They'll only hear about the NBA and the NBPA moving that forward. So I think if you look at the civil rights movement here in America, women were at the forefront. Women were the ones pushing the movement forward, but the names that people know are the names of men. So I think in terms of what role women will play, women will continue to play the role that they have been playing, which is to move the conversation forward, which is to not be afraid to have uncomfortable conversations. And, just hopefully, it's not about the credit, it's about what gets done. But hopefully some credit will be given to the women who are at the forefront, running families, and then also moving social justice issues forward.
Thank you. That's a great answer. I have and this is an observation. I mentioned earlier about my time in Europe and in the Middle East. I mean, I played there for 14 years. After being drafted by the Dallas Mavericks, and I picked up and learned a lot from there. Justin, we're going to start with this one with you. What are some of the things that are taking place in Europe? And I could speak a little bit on how the family orders are, how the community or how it goes in their communities. But from your standpoint, what are some of the things that we can take from what they're doing internationally that can move things forward here?
Yeah, so as background, I spend most of my time talking to people outside the U.S. because one of the topics we had the other day was American exceptionalism and how it's helpful in certain things, but also very destructive in others. And so, yeah, I'm like a sponge. I just listen to other people outside the U.S. constantly and, think of myself as a global leader. So you look at these other countries where they're not having the issues that they have in the United States. They're just not. There's so much more inclusion. There's so much more equality. And I think in those countries, what it comes down to is this. And again, as background, I've interviewed tens of thousands of people for stories. Some of the richest people in the world, multi-billionaires, and some, homeless people with nothing. And there's literally one common denominator for people who are successful or who've created successful lives or had good lives. And the one common denominator is those people have had at least one person that genuinely cares about them. And if you have that, and I think you see that more in other countries than you do here, certainly in certain neighborhoods and certain places, there's just a lack of caring. So when you have that, that's what leads to greatness, is if you have one person that really cares about you and believes in you.
Yeah, that's actually, I think you're spot on with that. I tell people often when I do interviews and they would ask me about if I had any racial issues when I was living abroad. I've never had a one. Whereas growing up, here in Chicago, I was, Roy kind of ran through my background a little bit, but I was a #1 basketball player in the state in high school and #3 in the nation. And I was telling a group last week how many times I had been slammed on the hood of a CPD police car, knowing that everyone had an idea, if you knew anything about sports, about me in Chicago. Same thing happened in Champaign. I've never had that happen in Europe. Never been questioned, never been pulled over, no mistaken identities, or we're looking for someone else. So I think that goes back to a communal acceptance of people. I think we have people here that care more about their dogs than they do about the man that's outside on the street that's struggling. So I think that's a great point, Justin, that you made. But as we go forward, and I'm going to start this with you, Reggie, what are some of the things that I guess we can do to, concrete, like a community group or a business or that they can start to do that can help continue the conversation, but not just continue the conversation, but to begin to move things forward? Roy, we got Reggie muted.
There we go. Moving the conversation forward. I'm sorry, Deon, was that the question? I got distracted. I'm reading.
The conversation, what are some next steps that we could take to not just the conversation, but to move the whole effort forward?
Well, I guess, again, it's about things like this, that we continue applying this kind of thought, this kind of energy. I want to push back a little bit on what Justin shared with us, that I hope and pray that our catalyst for this is not simply COVID-19 and we're all quarantined so we have time. I trust that it's a lot deeper than that, that people have been struck inside of their core. And 6 months, 1 year, 10 years after COVID, we are working through this problem. We are continuing to build. It's like building blocks. And if we don't continue, it'll stall. And then we will begin to take steps backwards. So my efforts from now on would be to continue to keep this as an issue. No matter where we are in it, we have to, until we're all looked as equal. And as a Black male, Deon, we share just like everyone else. I grew up in Inglewood. My grandparents raised me. My grandmother was the strongest and smartest person in the world and taught me the things that I needed to know when I left the house, because things were not equal. And when you're 5, 6, 7 years old and you have to learn that, and you have to teach your children that, and my daughter has to teach her almost 2-year-old son that, my grandson, I am going to continue to apply the pressure, because I don't want my grandson to have the conversation with his son.
Thank you. Alycia, would you like to share?
Yes, and I agree with that. I hope that it's not the fact that we're quarantined that, but I understand the point. It was a perfect storm, right? Because these issues are not new. These have been going on. And even in fact, in terms of things being taped, starting with Mike Brown and Ferguson in 2014, we watched video after video after video of these issues in our face. However, because life is busy and because people have so many different interests and things pulling at them, perhaps the fact that we are in quarantine made people really pay attention. So in terms of what's the momentum moving forward, and are things being done quick enough? It started in 1619, so no, things are not being done quick enough. I think there's with the momentum that we have right now, it's so important to really go through system by system by system and make these changes and apply the pressure while the attention is on it, but then also while we have that momentum to keep building. So I think it's up to all of us to say enough is enough. We've seen the inequalities, we've seen the injustices. Now is as good a time as ever to make sure that we can be the change that we want to see.
You mentioned the change we want to see. And a lot of this, yes, it falls on the community, but I believe it falls on us making sure that we put the right people in office, because they're the ones that make the change up top. This is where laws are signed, are done and created. And what's our responsibility? Yes, people say, yeah, everyone has to vote. But how do we, and this is an off-topic question, I mean, maybe this helps me, make sure that we're getting the right people to run, and that we're getting the right people that want to step forward, serve the public trust, but at the same time, understand that we're moving in this direction and that this direction is not going to stop. So I'm throwing that out there to my panel. I wish I could throw it to everyone, but Roy got everyone muted but us.
I think I'll just start because I'm unmuted right now. But I think civic engagement is something that is just not as, there's not as much awareness on civic engagement. I don't think people know how things work. I think people are slowly learning. There are documentaries out there like, let's say 13th, for example, on Netflix, where it explains the roles that the people that you put in office in various systems, the very real effect that it has on communities. So I think if people want to really understand the reasoning why voting is important, it's one thing to just say vote, but what does that mean? That's in a vacuum, right? That statement is in a vacuum if you don't understand that the people that you put into office, everything from your mayor, who determines the police budget and determines, sets the tone for the police department, to your district attorneys who are deciding which cases to prosecute. I think if people really were educated and understood the importance of each level of voting, it wouldn't sound just so vague, just go vote. It makes a difference, but it does, but let's explain why it does. And just to bring in what we do with professional athletes have this incredible platform. I think the more that they're aware of the systems that are in place and why voting is important and the different levels of voting, I think the more they're better able to articulate that to their their platform and use their platform to get the right people in office, encourage people to run, encourage people to be more mindful of civic engagement and being a part of the political process.
First of all, I love that answer. And you touched on something that we've seen a lot of the universities doing now, including the University of Illinois, is putting together a plan, one, to help better educate our student athletes. We're going to, and we're in the process of figuring out how to work with our government relations team on presenting and educating our student athletes. I think that's something that is definitely necessary across the board, because like you said, I don't believe they're even teaching civics in high school anymore, which is probably something that we should be learning from the time we're in elementary and grammar school and going forward into high school. I don't believe those things are being taught right now. And I know my daughter has never said once to me, Dad, I need help with civics. And it is truly important that we get back to that. So thank you. I thought that was an excellent answer, first and foremost. So it looks like we're losing a few people, but do we have, is Keenan or Reggie? Oh, there you go. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Would you guys like to expire on that?
Yeah, I would. And I think that we need to get out. Folks need to get out and volunteer. Get out into your community. Learn what your community needs are. And you get a different perspective when you're out there in the trenches and you see what people need. And then we take that to our leadership. Vote for the people who are in the community. And I'm not talking party. I'm talking you vote for people that are doing things in the community, are uplifting the community and moving the community in the direction that your volunteerism sees that it needs to go. So get out, get involved, and when we do that, light bulbs will turn on, and we will know the person that needs to lead us when we see him and the way he speaks, because it will be internalized through what your experience was in the community.
And just adding my 2 cents in there as well. I mean, I have my own beliefs on the two-party system and all that, but ultimately, I think voting and education are 2 of the most important factors in it all. Obviously, you vote because it's how you make your voice heard, you know, through the ballot, but also education. And I don't mean just like like formal K through 12 or what you learn in college. What I mean by education is go on Google, go to the library. There's a plethora of resources available for you to educate yourself on how we got to where we're at now. I think a lot of folks sometimes forget that things don't exist as they are just because. There's always a cause and effect. So if a neighborhood, if there's a quote unquote bad neighborhood, you know, it's not like that just because, right? There's a history behind it. There's a very complex history behind it. And, you know, that neighborhood exists as it is now because of things that happened in the past. So once you get a better full picture on how much of a role you actually do play in shaping the future of your community, of society, of the country, I think you can make a much better informed decision on who or who not to vote for. I think that's a big key. It's just, you know, to understand a lot of our country's issues, you know, it's basic sociology, it's basic, you know, sort of civics and economics at that. And, you know, it just takes a little bit of extra effort for the average person, for all of us, to educate ourselves on how we got here and what we need to do to get to that better version of what this country and what our communities can be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Justin, I'm gonna give you the last word, and then you just saw Roy was hopping on in there. So, Justin.
Talk to as many great people as you can. I spend 90% of my day talking to amazing people around the world and just listening to them. That's it.